Matt Rhodes was dying beneath 100 pounds of timber when he heard a baby's cry cutting through the smoke. His ribs screamed. His hands were already bleeding. But that sound changed everything. He didn't know their names yet, didn't know he'd just found his reason to stop running from the past. All he knew was this: if he quit digging now, 3 souls would die in these ruins, including his own. Before we continue, if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and stay with me until the end of this story. And drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this journey reaches. Now let me take you back to where it all began. Matt Rhodes hadn't spoken to another human being in 6 days when he heard the scream. He was riding the ridge above Silver Creek Valley, his horse picking through September grass, when the sound tore through the afternoon like a knife. High-pitched, desperate. A woman's voice maybe a mile east, swallowed fast by wind. Matt's hands went tight on the reins. 6 years he'd been riding these mountains. 6 years of keeping his head down, his mouth shut, his heart locked up somewhere. Even he couldn't reach it. The war had taught him that caring got you killed. Losing his family had proved it. So he'd made rules. Keep moving. Stay alone. Don't look back. But that scream, it came again, weaker now, like whoever made it was losing the strength to try. "Hell," Matt said. He kicked his horse hard. The valley opened below as he rode Montana sky stretching wide and cold overhead. Then he saw smoke, thin and gray, rising from near the old Carter place. He'd passed that cabin once, small, crooked, the kind of structure that told you its people were either too broke or too stubborn to build proper shelter. The smoke got thicker. Then he saw what was left of the cabin. Collapsed. The whole damn thing. Roof caved in, walls buckled, timbers sticking out like broken ribs. Matt's gut clenched because he knew somebody was under there. He was off his horse before it stopped. "Hello?" he shouted. "Anyone hear me?" 3 seconds of nothing. Then so faint he almost missed it. "Help us." Matt's boots hit the ground running. He scrambled over broken boards and shattered glass, heading for the center where the roof beam had come down heaviest. "Where are you?" he called. "Here, please, my baby." The voice cracked on that last word, and Matt felt something twist in his chest. He dropped to his knees and started ripping timber away. First piece came up easy. Second one didn't. Third was waterlogged and heavy as sin, and when he finally threw it aside, splinters drove deep into his palms. He didn't stop. "Keep talking," he said. "Let me know you're still with me." "My baby's not crying anymore," the woman said, and there was so much terror in those words that Matt dug faster, throwing boards behind him, not caring that his hands were slick with blood now, that every piece of wood he moved tore his skin a little more. Then he saw her hand, pale, dusty, reaching up through a gap like she was drowning. "I see you," Matt said. "Hold on." He grabbed the main beam, the massive timber pinning her down, and tried to lift. It was 200 pounds if it was an ounce. Didn't budge. He repositioned, got his shoulder under it, and pushed with everything he had. His legs shook. His vision started going dark at the edges. "Come on," he growled. "Move, you bastard." The beam lifted 1 inch, 2. His back was on fire. His knees were about to give. But he wedged himself under that timber and held it there, muscles screaming, while he reached down into the gap with his free hand. "Can you move?" he gasped. "I can't. I have to get her." "Then grab her and get out. Now. I can't hold this much longer." He felt the woman shift, heard her cry out in pain. Then she was moving, dragging herself and something small toward the opening, and Matt's whole body was shaking now, his teeth grinding together so hard he thought they might crack. "Almost," he said, or tried to say. It came out as more of a grunt. Then the woman was clear, collapsing into dirt, with a bundle pressed to her chest, and Matt let go. The beam crashed down exactly where she'd been 2 seconds earlier. Matt fell backward, hitting the ground hard, his lungs burning as he tried to suck in air. His shoulders felt like someone had driven railroad spikes through them. His hands were ribbons of torn skin and splinters, but he was alive. Then he heard it. A cough. Tiny. Weak. The baby. Matt rolled onto his side, every muscle protesting, and looked. The woman was sitting up, hunched over the bundle in her arms. As Matt watched, a small face emerged from the cloth, red, furious, very much breathing. The baby started screaming. The woman started sobbing, clutching her child and rocking, and Matt felt something crack wide open in his chest. Something he'd thought was dead and buried with his sister back in Virginia. He pushed himself up. His legs wobbled but held. "You're safe," he said. The woman looked up. She was young, mid-20s maybe, with brown hair falling loose and wild around a face streaked with dust and tears. Cut above her eyebrow, dress torn at the shoulder, but alive. They were both alive. "Thank you," she whispered. "Oh God, thank you." "Don't thank me yet," Matt said. "Can you stand?" She tried, made it maybe 6 inches before her face went white and she gasped. "My leg," she said through gritted teeth. "Something's wrong." Matt knelt beside her, gentle now, and moved her torn skirt just enough to see. Her left leg was swollen, already dark bruises spreading from knee to ankle. He touched it carefully and she flinched. "Might be broken," he said. "Can't tell for sure, but you're not walking on it today." "My husband," the woman said suddenly, her eyes going wide. "Thomas went to town 3 days ago. He should have been back. What if he comes looking and finds—" Matt glanced at what was left of the cabin. If anyone else had been inside, they weren't anymore. But the way she said it, the fear mixed with something else, something bitter, told him the husband hadn't been there. "What's your name?" Matt asked. "Dia," she said. "Dia Carter. This is Sarah." She looked down at her baby, who'd stopped screaming and was now just making small, hiccuping sounds. "Matt Rhodes," he said, "and we're going to get you both to safety, but first we're staying here tonight. Sun's already dropping and you can't ride with that leg. Not yet." "But Thomas, if he's in town, he'll keep till morning," Matt said. It came out harder than he meant, and he saw Dia's expression shift, surprise, then something like understanding. She nodded slowly. "All right." Matt got to work fast. He cleared a space well away from the ruins, gathered wood from the collapsed cabin, careful to avoid anything that looked unstable, and built a fire as the sun dropped toward the mountains. He had supplies in his saddlebag, dried venison, coffee, 1 wool blanket. He gave her all of it without thinking twice. When the fire was going good and Dia was settled with Sarah tucked against her, Matt finally sat down across from them. For a minute, nobody spoke. The fire crackled. Sarah made small sleeping sounds. Dia stared into the flames like she was trying to find answers there. "Where are you from?" she asked finally. "Virginia." "Long way from home." "Don't have a home," Matt said. "Not anymore?" Dia looked up at him. "What happened?" Matt was quiet. He'd told this story exactly twice in 6 years, once to a bartender who was too drunk to remember, once to a priest who was too kind to judge. But sitting here in the ruins of Dia's life, watching her hold her baby while her own world fell apart, he found himself talking. "Had a farm outside Richmond," he said. "Small place, but it was ours. Me, my ma, my little sister Caroline. I was 19 when the war started. Signed up because everyone was signing up, and I thought—" He stopped, swallowed. "I thought I'd be back in 6 months, thought it'd be an adventure." "How long were you gone?" Dia asked softly. 4 years. Matt poked the fire with a stick, watching sparks rise. "By the time I made it home, the farm was ashes. Raiders came through in '64. Ma tried to fight them off." His voice went flat. "They shot her in the doorway. Caroline was 14. He couldn't finish that sentence. Didn't need to. Dia's sharp intake of breath told him she understood. "I buried them in the garden," Matt said, "where Ma used to grow tomatoes. Then I left, and I haven't stopped moving since." "I'm sorry," Dia whispered. "Everyone's sorry." Matt looked up at her. "But sorry doesn't bring them back. Doesn't change the fact that I was 500 miles away playing soldier while my family died. So I made myself a promise, no more caring, no more getting close, because everyone you love either leaves or gets taken, and I was done losing people. Then why did you stop today? Dia asked. Why didn't you just keep writing? That was the question, wasn't it? Matt had been asking himself the same thing since he heard that scream. Because I'm tired, he said finally. I'm tired of being the man who doesn't stop. Tired of writing past trouble. Tired of... He stopped searching for words. 6 years I've been telling myself I'm surviving, but what you said earlier was right. Surviving isn't the same as living. Dia studied him across the fire. Her baby was asleep now, tiny fist curled against her mother's chest. You remind me of my father, she said. He fought too, came home different, just sat in his chair and stared at nothing for 3 years until his heart gave out. Ma said it was his body that died, but really, he'd been gone since the war ended. Matt felt those words like a fist to the gut. I don't want that for you, Dia continued. Her voice was gentle but firm. You're still here, Matt. You still have time to come back. Come back to what? He asked. I don't have anything. You have choice, Dia said. You can keep running or you can stop. Right now, today, with us. Us, such a small word, such a big promise. Matt was still thinking about that when Dia spoke again. Can I tell you something? She asked. Go ahead. When that roof came down when I was trapped under there with Sarah, my first feeling wasn't fear. Dia's voice dropped. It was rage, because Thomas wasn't there, because he's never there. And I thought if I die here, if Sarah dies, it's his fault. All his fault. What do you mean he's never there? Dia looked down at her baby, touched Sarah's soft hair with one finger. I was a school teacher in Pennsylvania, she said. Had a good life. Small but good. Then I met Thomas at a church social. He was handsome, charming, talked about Montana like it was Eden itself. Wide open spaces, fresh starts, fortunes waiting to be made. We married 3 months later and headed west, with everything we owned in one wagon. She stopped, drew a shaky breath. He changed the minute we crossed the Mississippi. Or maybe I just finally saw who he really was. Started drinking, gambling. Every dollar we saved he'd lose in a card game or spend buying rounds at whatever saloon we passed. I begged him to stop. He said I was nagging, said I didn't understand how men did business. Matt's jaw tightened, but he kept quiet. When I told him I was pregnant, Dia continued, he left for 2 days, just vanished. Came back drunk and told me, her voice cracked, told me maybe we'd made a mistake, that he wasn't ready to be tied down. Son of a... Matt bit off the curse. I thought Sarah would change him, Dia said. Thought when he held her, saw her face. He'd remember why we did this, but he got worse. Started staying in town for days. Left us with no food, no money, and 3 days ago he left again, said he had business in Silver Creek, and I... She stopped, looked up at Matt with eyes that were dry now but full of something harder than tears. I was relieved, she said. When he left, I was relieved. And when that cabin started falling, when I thought we might die, I wasn't thinking about Thomas coming home. I was thinking that at least I wouldn't have to deal with him anymore. What kind of wife thinks that? The kind who's been abandoned, Matt said quietly. That's not your fault, Dia. Man makes vows, he's supposed to keep them. I just wanted to be enough, Dia whispered. For someone, for him. Matt leaned forward. You are enough. You survived a building falling on you. You kept your baby alive. You're sitting here with a busted leg and no home, and you're still fighting. That's not enough. That's stronger than most men I fought beside. Dia looked at him, and something shifted in her face. The hardness softened. The grief eased just a fraction. Thank you, she said, for saying that, for all of this. You don't need to thank me. Yes, I do. Dia shifted Sarah gently in her arms. Because you could have kept riding. Most men would have. But you stopped. You dug through that rubble until your hands bled. You're sitting here with us in the cold, when you could be long gone. She paused. That matters, Matt. You matter. Matt felt his throat go tight. He looked away toward the darkness beyond their small fire. Nobody had said those words to him in 6 years. You matter. They sat in silence after that, the fire burning low, the Montana night spreading vast and cold above them. Eventually, Dia fell asleep sitting up. Sarah cradled against her chest, and Matt carefully moved the blanket to cover them both. He lay down on the opposite side of the fire and stared at the stars. Come back, Dia had said. You still have time. But come back to what he was, 31 years old, with nothing to his name except a horse, a gun, and ghosts he couldn't outrun. What did coming back even look like for someone like him? Then Sarah made a small sound in her sleep, just a tiny sigh, and Matt turned his head to look at them. Mother and daughter curled together by the fire, alive because he'd stopped, because he'd chosen for once not to keep riding. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that was where coming back started. When Matt finally fell asleep, he dreamed of Caroline, but this time when she called his name, it didn't sound like an accusation. It sounded like forgiveness. Morning came fast and cold. Matt woke to Sarah crying, not the terrified wail from yesterday, but the mad, hungry cry of a baby who was done being patient. He sat up and saw Dia trying to feed her tears running silent down the young mother's face. What's wrong? Matt was at her side in seconds. She's hungry, but Dia's voice broke. I don't have enough milk. I've been trying, but my body's not, I can't. Hey, Matt put his hand on her shoulder, firm but gentle. You kept her alive through a collapsed building. Your body did exactly what it needed to do. Now we adjust. But what if I can't give her what she needs? Then we find another way, Matt said. There's a woman in Silver Creek. Mrs. Chen runs the general store, lost her own baby 2 years back, but still. He stopped, cleared his throat. Point is, there are options. We'll figure it out. Dia looked up at him. Her eyes were red, but something in them had steadied. Why are you helping us? She asked. Really? Matt thought about lying, thought about giving her some easy answer about duty or decency. But after last night, after everything they'd shared by that fire, he couldn't. Because I heard you scream yesterday, and I had a choice, he said. Keep riding or come back. And I've spent 6 years riding away from everything that mattered. I'm done being that man, Dia. I'm done being the guy who doesn't stop. Dia reached up and took his hand. Her fingers were cold, but her grip was strong. Thank you, Matt Rhodes, she said quietly, for stopping. They left an hour later, moving slow. Matt settled Dia on his horse, handed Sarah up to her, then led them carefully down into the valley. Every step jarred Dia's injured leg, and he could see pain flash across her face, but she never complained once, just held her baby and kept her eyes forward. As they rode, she told him more about Thomas, about how he'd borrow money and never pay it back, how he'd promise things would get better and then disappear for days, how she'd stopped believing his words and started watching his hands, checking for tremors. That meant he'd been drinking, for bruises. That meant he'd been fighting. Did he hit you? Matt asked. His voice came out harder than he meant. Once, Dia said. I told him if he did it again, I'd wait till he was asleep and brain him with the skillet. He believed me. Despite everything, Matt almost smiled. Good. I'm not proud of the woman I became out here, Dia said softly. I used to be kind, gentle, but this place, it makes you hard or it breaks you. I chose hard. Hard isn't the same as broken, Matt said, and what I see is a woman who fought like hell to survive. Nothing shameful about that. Dia was quiet for a moment. Then she said, when we get to town, I need to find Thomas. See if he's there, if he's... She stopped. If he's still alive. Matt's stomach dropped. He'd been dreading this moment since last night. Dia, he said carefully, before we get there, I need to tell you something. She looked down at him, and he saw her face change, saw her read something in his expression that made her go very still. What is it? She asked. When I rode into Silver Creek yesterday to ask about the doctor, I saw the sheriff. Asked him if he knew Thomas Carter. And Matt stopped walking, looked up at her. Dia, your husband's dead. For 3 seconds she didn't react, just sat there on the horse holding Sarah, her face blank. Then she said very quietly how saloon fight 4 days ago. He was drunk, tried to steal money from another man's table, got shot. Sheriff said it was fast. Matt watched her face, waiting for the collapse, waiting for screaming or sobbing or denial. Instead, Dia straightened her spine, lifted her chin, met his eyes. Did he suffer? She asked. What did Thomas suffer when he died? No, Matt said. Sheriff said it was quick. Good. Dia adjusted her hold on Sarah, drew a long breath. Then I'm a widow now, I stand alone. She paused, then added softer, but I stand. And in that moment, watching this young woman refuse to break under the weight of everything that had been taken from her, watching her choose strength over surrender, Matt Rhodes felt something he hadn't felt since before the war. He felt hope. Not the desperate, clawing kind, not the kind that demands and expects and shatters when life doesn't cooperate. Just simple, quiet hope. The kind that says, maybe things can be different. Maybe stopping was the right choice after all. They reached Silver Creek just before noon. The town was small but sturdy main street with a general store, a saloon, a church, and maybe 30 buildings scattered around. People stopped to stare as Matt led his horse through with Dia and Sarah riding, and he could feel their curiosity like weight on his shoulders. He stopped in front of the doctor's office, a neat white building with a sign that read, Dr. Fisher, Physician. Let's get that leg looked at, Matt said. He helped Dia down carefully, taking Sarah so Dia could lean on him without dropping the baby. Sarah immediately started fussing in his arms, and Matt froze, suddenly aware he was holding something small and breakable and important. Support her head, Dia said, smiling despite everything. You've got her. Matt adjusted his hold, awkward but careful, and Sarah settled against his chest. He could feel her tiny heartbeat through his shirt. You're a natural, Dia said softly. Don't know about that. Trust me, you are. Dr. Fisher was an older man, gray-haired and efficient, who took one look at Dia and ushered her inside immediately. Matt waited on the porch with Sarah rocking her gently when she fussed, feeling more out of his depth than he had in years. That's when Sheriff Burke came across the street. You the one who brought in Dia Carter? The sheriff asked. He was younger than Matt expected, maybe 30, with a thick mustache and eyes that missed nothing. I am. Found her out at the homestead. Cabin collapsed, Matt said. She and the baby needed help. The sheriff's expression shifted, surprise, then discomfort, then something almost like guilt. You told her about Thomas? He asked. I did. How'd she take it? Matt looked down at Sarah, sleeping now against his chest. Better than most would have. The sheriff sighed. Thomas Carter was a fool and a drunk, but he didn't deserve to die over a poker game. Still can't say I'm surprised. Man kept picking fights he couldn't win. He paused. You planning to stick around? Don't know yet, Matt said honestly. Well, if you do, might be some work available. Town needs a deputy. Last one quit 3 weeks ago, said the pay wasn't worth the trouble. The sheriff studied Matt. You look like a man who's seen trouble before. I have. Then think about it. We could use someone reliable. Burke tipped his hat. Name's Burke, by the way. Charlie Burke. Matt Rhodes. They shook hands, and Matt watched the sheriff head back to his office. Deputy work. Actual steady employment. The idea should have sent him running, tied him to one place, one set of responsibilities. But standing there on that porch, holding this sleeping baby, Matt found himself not running for once. When Dia came out an hour later, her leg was bandaged and her face looked less gray. Not broken, she said, and her relief was obvious. Just badly bruised. Doctor says I need to rest it for a few weeks, but I'll heal fine. That's good, Matt said. Dia took Sarah from him gentle and practiced. Thank you for holding her. She's easy, Matt said, though his arms already missed the weight of her. They stood there for a moment, neither quite sure what came next. Then Dia said, I need to find somewhere to stay. Do you know if there's… Mrs. Chen runs a boarding house behind the general store. Matt interrupted. I already asked. She's got a room available and she said the first week is free, given… He stopped. Given your circumstances. Dia's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back fast. You already arranged, Matt. You didn't have to. I know. Why are you doing this? Matt looked at her, at this young woman who'd lost her home, her husband, her whole life in the span of 2 days, and was still standing, still fighting. Because you shouldn't have to face this alone, he said quietly. Nobody should. Dia stepped forward and without warning, wrapped one arm around him. Sarah pressed between them. Matt went stiff for half a second, then carefully put his arms around them both. Thank you, Dia whispered against his chest, for everything. They stood like that for a long moment. 3 people who'd been strangers 24 hours ago, now bound together by rubble and rescue, and something neither of them had words for yet. When they finally separated, Matt said, Let me walk you to Mrs. Chen's. You're staying? Dia asked. Matt thought about that, about the sheriff's offer, about the hope he'd felt watching Dia refuse to break, about the way Sarah had fallen asleep against his chest, like she trusted him, about 6 years of running and how tired he was. Yeah, he said, I think I am. Dia smiled, the first real smile he'd seen from her. Good, she said, because we're not done needing you yet. As they walked down Silver Creek's main street together, Matt Rhodes realized something. For the first time in 6 years, he wasn't thinking about what he'd lost. He was thinking about what he'd found. Mrs. Chen's boarding house sat behind the general store, a 2-story structure that had seen better days but still stood proud. The Chinese woman who answered the door was maybe 50, with sharp eyes and hands that moved quick and efficient as she looked Dia and Sarah over. You, the widow, Mrs. Chen said, not a question. Yes, ma'am, Dia answered. Mrs. Chen's expression softened just slightly. Rooms upstairs. 2nd door on the right. Clean sheets on the bed. Chamber pots empty. You need anything you ask? Thank you, Dia said. Mr. Rhodes said the first week is free. Yes. Mrs. Chen looked at Matt. You staying too? No, ma'am, just helping Mrs. Carter get settled. Mrs. Chen studied him with those sharp eyes. You're the one pulled them out of the collapsed cabin. Word traveled fast in small towns. Matt shouldn't have been surprised. I am, he said. Then you eat here tonight. No charge. Anyone saves a baby earns a hot meal. She turned and walked back inside, clearly expecting them to follow. The room was small but clean, a bed, a chair, a washstand with a cracked mirror. Dia sat down carefully, Sarah still in her arms, and for the first time since Matt had pulled her from the rubble, she looked like she might actually rest. This is good, she said quietly. This is really good. Matt set her small bag, the only thing he'd been able to salvage from the cabin, on the chair. You need anything else? No, Dia stopped, looked up at him. Actually, yes, I need to know you're not leaving town tonight. Matt felt something catch in his chest. I'm not. Promise me. Dia, promise me, Matt, because if you ride out tonight, I'll understand. You've done more than enough. But I need to know now so I can prepare myself. Matt knelt down so they were eye level. I'm not leaving, he said. Sheriff offered me deputy work. I'm going to take it. I'm staying in Silver Creek. Dia's eyes filled with tears. Why? Because I'm tired of running, and because… He stopped searching for the right words. Because yesterday, when I heard you scream, something in me woke up that's been asleep for 6 years. I don't know what this is yet, what we are, but I know I'm not walking away from it. Dia reached out and touched his face, just her fingertips against his rough cheek, and Matt went very still. "Thank you," she whispered. Then Sarah started crying and the moment broke. Dia laughed, watery but real, and turned her attention to her baby. Matt stood up, suddenly aware that the room felt too small with all the feeling packed into it. "I'll let you rest," he said. "Matt," Dia called as he reached the door. "Yeah, come back tomorrow." "I will," he said, and meant it. Matt spent that night in the saloon, not drinking, just sitting in the corner with coffee, while he watched Silver Creek's evening crowd filter through. Miners and ranchers, mostly men with hard hands and tired faces. He recognized the type because he'd been one of them for years. The bartender, a thin man named Davis, brought him a second coffee without being asked. "Heard what you did," Davis said, "pulling the Carter woman and her baby out." "Word travels," Matt said. "Always does, especially when it's something good." Davis leaned against the bar. "Thomas Carter drank here the night he died, got himself liquored up and started bragging about a poker game across the street. I tried to cut him off, but he wouldn't hear it. Walked out of here like he owned the world. And got shot 20 minutes later. More like 10. Davis shook his head. "Man was a fool, but his wife, she deserves better than what she got." "She does," Matt agreed. "You planning to stick around?" Matt thought about Dia's face when he'd promised not to leave. About Sarah sleeping against his chest. About the way something in him had shifted the moment he'd started digging through that rubble. "Yeah," he said. "I think I am." Davis smiled. "Good. Town could use a man like you." Matt spent the rest of the evening listening to the saloon's rhythm, laughter and arguments, and the clink of glasses. Once upon a time, he'd have been uncomfortable here, surrounded by people and noise and life. But tonight, it felt different, like maybe he could be part of something again without it destroying him. When he finally left, the moon was high and Silver Creek was quiet. He found a room at the other boarding house, the one that catered to miners, and lay in an actual bed for the first time in weeks. Sleep came easier than it had in years. He dreamed of Caroline again, but this time she was smiling. The next morning, Matt found Sheriff Burke in his office, feet up on his desk, reading yesterday's newspaper. "Didn't expect you back," Burke said, not looking up. "Said I'd think about the deputy job. And I'll take it, if the offer's still good." Burke put down the paper and studied Matt with those sharp eyes. "Pays $40 a month. You provide your own gun and horse. Job's mostly boring, breaking up fights, escorting drunks home, keeping an eye on things. But sometimes it gets dangerous. Last deputy took a knife to the shoulder, breaking up a brawl." "I've had worse," Matt said. "I bet you have." Burke stood and offered his hand. "Welcome aboard, Rhodes. When can you start?" "Now." Burke grinned. "That's what I like to hear. Come on, I'll show you the jail." The jail was a small brick building behind the sheriff's office, with 4 cells and a potbelly stove. Burke walked Matt through the basics, where the keys were kept, how to handle paperwork, which families in town tended to cause trouble. "Mostly it's quiet," Burke said, "but when it's not, it gets loud fast. You comfortable with that?" "I spent 4 years in the war," Matt said. "I can handle loud." "Fair enough." Burke handed him a tin star. "Pin that on and you're official. Congratulations, Deputy Rhodes." Matt looked down at the badge in his hand. It was tarnished and bent at one corner, clearly passed between multiple owners, but holding it felt like holding something solid, something real. He pinned it to his chest. "One more thing," Burke said. "About Dia Carter." Matt went still. "What about her?" "Town's already talking about you pulling her out, bringing her here, getting her set up at Mrs. Chen's." Burke held up a hand before Matt could speak. "I'm not judging, but small towns talk and talk can hurt a woman's reputation, especially a widow. You need to be careful how you handle this." "I'm not handling anything," Matt said. "I'm just helping someone who needed help." "I know that, you know that, but people see a man and a woman and they make assumptions." Burke's expression was kind, but firm. "I'm just saying be smart about it, for her sake." Matt felt anger flare hot in his chest, but he forced it down. Burke was right. Small towns did talk, and Dia had enough to deal with without adding scandal to the list. Understood, Matt said tightly. Good man. Burke clapped him on the shoulder. Now come on, let's introduce you to the town. Matt spent the rest of the morning walking Silver Creek's streets, with Burke meeting people, learning faces and names. The blacksmith Patterson, who had 6 kids and a laugh like thunder. The school teacher, Miss Walsh, an older woman with gray hair and kind eyes, who asked about Dia immediately. The owner of the general store, Mr. Chen, who gripped Matt's hand hard and said, "You did good saving them." Everywhere they went, people knew. Everyone had heard. And most of them looked at Matt with something he hadn't seen directed at him in years' respect. It was late afternoon when Matt finally made it back to Mrs. Chen's boarding house. He knocked on Dia's door, and she answered, holding Sarah, her hair braided, and her face looking less exhausted than yesterday. "Matt," she said, and her smile was immediate and genuine. "Come in." He stepped inside. The room looked more lived in already. Sarah's blanket hung over the chair to air out Dia's few belongings arranged neatly on the washstand. "How's the leg?" Matt asked. "Hurts, but I'll live." Dia shifted Sarah to her other hip. "Mrs. Chen brought up broth this morning and helped me change Sarah's diaper. She's been very kind." "Good." Dia studied him, and her expression shifted to something more curious. "You're wearing a badge." Matt glanced down at the tin star on his chest. "Took the deputy job." "So you really are staying?" "I really am." Dia sat down slowly on the edge of the bed, and Matt saw her hands were shaking slightly. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." Matt felt his stomach tighten. "All right." "Why?" Dia asked. "Why are you doing this? Staying in town, taking a job, coming back here to check on me? Why, Matt?" He could have given her a dozen easy answers. Could have talked about duty or decency or just doing the right thing, but they'd been through too much for lies now. "Because when I pulled you out of that rubble," Matt said slowly, "something in me came back to life. I told you I've spent 6 years running from everything that mattered, from connection, from responsibility, from caring about anything or anyone, and it was killing me, slowly, but killing me all the same." He moved to the window, looked out at Silver Creek's main street. "Then I heard you scream," he continued, "and I had a choice. Keep running or stop, and I stopped. And for the first time in 6 years, I felt like maybe I had a reason to, like maybe there was something worth staying for." "Me and Sarah," Dia said softly. Matt turned to look at her. "You and Sarah." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Sarah made small, cooing sounds, oblivious to the weight of what was being said. Then Dia said, "I can't give you anything, Matt. I have no money, no home, nothing but a baby and a borrowed room and a dead husband's debts. If you're staying because you think, because you expect—" "I don't expect anything," Matt interrupted. "I'm not Thomas. I'm not here to take or demand or make promises I can't keep. I'm just here." "For how long?" "As long as you'll let me be." Dia's eyes filled with tears. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I'm scared that I'm going to start depending on you, and then you're going to leave, and I'll be alone again, and I don't know if I can survive that." Matt crossed the room and knelt in front of her the same way he had yesterday. "I can't promise I'll never leave," he said quietly. "Can't promise I won't mess this up or let you down. But I can promise I won't run, not unless you tell me to. And I can promise that whatever this is between us, I'm going to show up for it, every day, as best I can." Dia looked at him for a long time, then she reached out and took his hand. "Okay," she said, "then show up." "I will." Sarah started fussing then, and Dia laughed through her tears. "She's hungry again. I swear this child eats more than a grown man." "Mrs. Chen mentioned she knows a woman who's nursing," Matt said, standing. "Might be able to help with feedings." "She already told me. Mrs. Patterson, the blacksmith's wife. She's coming by tomorrow. Dia looked up at him. Everyone's been so kind, Matt. I didn't expect that. Small towns take care of their own. I'm not one of their own yet. Give it time, Matt said. You will be. He left shortly after walking back through Silver Creek's evening streets with his hands in his pockets and his thoughts tangled. He'd meant every word he'd said to Dia. He wasn't running. He was staying. But what did that mean exactly? What was he to her? What was she to him? He didn't have answers yet, but for the first time in 6 years, he was willing to wait and find out. The next few weeks fell into a rhythm. Matt worked his deputy shifts, mostly quiet days of walking the streets, checking in with shopkeepers, breaking up the occasional drunk argument. Burke was a good boss, fair and competent, and Matt found himself settling into the work easier than he'd expected. Every afternoon he'd stop by Mrs. Chen's to check on Dia. Sometimes he'd bring supplies, milk, bread, whatever Mrs. Chen said was needed. Sometimes he'd just sit with her while Sarah slept, talking about nothing important, learning the shape of each other's lives. Dia told him about Pennsylvania, about teaching children to read, about her mother's garden, about Sunday dinners with her whole family crowded around a too-small table. Her voice would go soft when she talked about home, and Matt understood that ache, the longing for something you could never get back. He told her about the farm in Virginia, about Caroline's laugh, about his mother's singing, about the way morning light would hit the fields and make everything look gold. He told her about the war, too, not the worst parts, but enough so she understood what it had cost him. "Do you regret it?" Dia asked one afternoon. "Fighting." Matt thought about that. "No, someone had to, but I regret what I lost while I was gone, regret not being there when it mattered." "You're here now," Dia said quietly. "That has to count for something." Maybe. Sarah was getting bigger, more alert. She'd look at Matt now when he walked in, her tiny face tracking his movements. Once, when he'd picked her up to give Dia's arms a rest, Sarah had grabbed his finger and held on tight, and Matt had felt his heart do something complicated in his chest. "She likes you," Dia said, watching them. "I like her too. She needs a father, Matt." The words hung in the air between them. Matt looked at Dia, saw the vulnerability in her face, the fear and hope mixed together. "I know," he said carefully, "but that's a big thing, Dia. We should take our time with that. How much time? However much you need." Dia smiled, but it was sad. "I don't want to rush this. I don't want to make the same mistakes I made with Thomas, but I also don't want to pretend I don't feel what I feel." "What do you feel?" Matt asked. She met his eyes. "Safe. For the first time in 2 years, I feel safe. And I think that's because of you." Matt felt something crack open wider and among his chest. "Dia." "You don't have to say anything," she said quickly. I wanted you to know." He reached out and took her hand, held it between both of his. "I feel it too," he said quietly. "I don't know what to call it yet, but I feel it." They sat like that for a long time, hands clasped, while Sarah slept, and the afternoon light slanted through the window. It was Miss Walsh, the school teacher who came to Matt 6 weeks after he'd arrived in Silver Creek. He was at the sheriff's office when she walked in, her gray hair pinned neatly and her expression determined. "Deputy Rhodes," she said, "I need to speak with you about Mrs. Carter." Matt's stomach dropped. "Is she all right?" "She's fine, but I have a proposition." Miss Walsh sat down without being invited. "I'm retiring at the end of the school term. I'm too old for this work and my eyes are failing. The town needs a new teacher." Matt waited, not sure where this was going. "I've spoken with Mrs. Carter several times over the past weeks," Miss Walsh continued. "She's educated, articulate, and excellent with children. She'd make a fine teacher." "She would," Matt agreed. "The problem is the school board won't hire a woman with a young baby. They think it's improper, that she won't be able to manage both responsibilities." Miss Walsh's eyes flashed with anger. "Never mind that I raised 3 children while teaching. Men on the school board never remember that part." "What do you need from me?" Matt asked. "Convince them. You have their respect. You're the man who saved her. You're Burke's deputy. You're trusted. If you speak on her behalf, they'll listen." Matt thought about Dia, about how she'd talked about teaching back in Pennsylvania, about the way her face had lit up when she'd mentioned children learning to read. "When's the next school board meeting?" he asked. Miss Walsh smiled. "Tomorrow night." The meeting was held in the church with five men sitting in the front pew like judges. Matt stood in front of them, hat in his hands, feeling like he was back in the army facing a court-martial. "Gentlemen," he started, "I'm here to speak on behalf of Mrs. Dia Carter for the teaching position." James Richter, who owned the largest ranch outside town, spoke first. "With all due respect, Deputy, the woman just lost her husband. She has a baby to care for. Teaching is a serious responsibility." "I know it is," Matt said, "and Mrs. Carter is serious about it. She taught for 3 years in Pennsylvania before coming west. She's educated, patient, and dedicated." "What about the child?" another board member asked. "Who'll watch the baby while she's teaching?" "I will." Mrs. Chen's voice came from the back of the church. Everyone turned. The Chinese woman walked forward, her posture straight and proud. "I watch the baby during school hours," Mrs. Chen said. "No charge. Mrs. Carter is good woman. She deserves chance." "That's very generous," Richter said slowly. But what?" Miss Walsh stood up now. "But she's a widow. But she has a child. I had 3 children when I started teaching, gentlemen. My husband had died of cholera 6 months prior. This board hired me anyway, and I've served this town for 32 years. The board members shifted uncomfortably. "Mrs. Carter deserves the same chance I got," Miss Walsh continued. "She's qualified, she's willing, and she needs this work. Unless you're planning to support her and her child on charity forever." That hit home. Matt could see it in their faces. "I'll vouch for her," Matt said. "Not just as a deputy, but as someone who's seen her strength. She survived her cabin collapsing on her. She's raising a baby alone in a strange town. She's one of the strongest people I've met. If she says she can teach your children, she can teach your children." The board members looked at each other, whispered among themselves. Finally, Richter nodded. "All right, we'll give her a trial period. 1 school term. If the children learn and the parents are satisfied, the job's hers permanent." Matt felt relief flood through him. "Thank you. Thank Mrs. Chen and Miss Walsh," Richter said. "They're the ones who made this happen." When Matt told Dia that night, she cried. Not sad tears, happy ones, relief ones, tears that said maybe things were going to be okay after all. "I can't believe it," she said, holding Sarah tight. "I can teach again. I can actually—" Her voice broke. "Thank you, Matt. Thank you for speaking up for me." "You earned it yourself," Matt said. "I just told them what I already knew." Dia looked at him, and something in her expression shifted, softened. She stepped forward and very carefully, very deliberately, kissed his cheek. Matt went absolutely still. "Thank you," she whispered again, "for everything." Then she stepped back, blushing, and turned her attention to Sarah. Matt walked home that night with his hand pressed to his cheek, where her lips had been feeling like he'd just been given something precious. He was falling for her. He knew that now. Probably had been since the moment he'd heard her scream, but acknowledging it, letting himself feel it, that was new. That was terrifying, because caring meant risking loss, and he'd already lost so much. But as he lay in bed that night staring at the ceiling, Matt realized something. He was tired of being afraid, tired of running from feeling, tired of pretending that surviving was the same as living. Dia and Sarah had given him a reason to stop. The least he could do was be brave enough to see where that reason led. Summer turned to fall, and Silver Creek prepared for the new school term. Dia threw herself into preparing, reading every book Miss Walsh lent her, organizing lesson plans, learning the names of the children who'd be in her class. Matt watched her transform from the broken woman he'd pulled from the rubble into someone vibrant and alive, and it did something to his heart he couldn't quite name. He was at her door one evening when she asked, "Will you walk with me tomorrow before the first day of school? I'm nervous, and I think I'd like you there." "Of course," Matt said. They walked through Silver Creek the next morning early, before the sun was fully up, with Sarah bundled against the September chill. Dia's hand found Matt's as they walked, and he held on tight. "What if they don't like me?" Dia asked quietly. "What if I'm terrible at this?" "You won't be." "How do you know?" "Because you care," Matt said. "And caring makes all the difference." Dia looked up at him, and in the dawn light, her face was beautiful. "You saved my life," she said. "You know that, right? Not just from the cabin, from everything that came after. You saved me, Matt Rhodes." "You saved me too," he said quietly. "You just don't know it yet." She smiled, squeezed his hand. "Then I guess we're even." They stood there in the middle of the empty street holding hands, while the sun rose over Montana, and Matt thought, This is what coming back feels like. When Dia walked into that schoolhouse an hour later, 20 children staring up at her with curious eyes, Matt watched from the doorway, watched her smile and introduce herself, watched her start teaching. And he thought, I'm going to marry that woman someday. The thought should have scared him, should have sent him running. Instead, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. He walked back to the sheriff's office with a lightness in his step that Burke noticed immediately. You look happy, the sheriff observed. Maybe I am, Matt said. It's the widow, isn't it? You're falling for her. Matt didn't deny it. Yeah, I am. Well, Burke said, grinning, it's about damn time something good happened to both of you. And Matt, for the first time in 6 years, found himself agreeing. Matt was breaking up a fight outside the saloon 3 weeks later when he saw the man on the gray horse. Something about him set Matt's teeth on edge. Immediately, the way he sat too straight in the saddle. The way his eyes swept the street like he was looking for something specific. The man was maybe 40, well-dressed in a way that said money, with a face that would have been handsome if not for the hardness around his mouth. Burke noticed too. Know him? The sheriff asked. No, Matt said, but I don't like him. The stranger dismounted in front of the general store and went inside. Matt watched him through the window, saw him talking to Mr. Chen, saw Chen shake his head and point toward Mrs. Chen's boarding house. Matt's stomach went cold. I need to go, he said to Burke. Go where? Just go. He was moving before Burke could ask more questions, his boots hitting the dirt hard as he crossed the street. He reached Mrs. Chen's just as the stranger was knocking on Dia's door. Can I help you? Matt called out. The stranger turned. Up close, Matt could see the expensive fabric of his coat, the gold watch chain, the ring on his finger that probably cost more than Matt made in a year. I'm looking for Mrs. Dia Carter, the stranger said. His voice was smooth, educated, with an accent that said East Coast money. Who's asking? Lawrence Pemberton. I'm her husband's brother. Matt felt like he'd been punched in the gut. Thomas had never mentioned family. Dia had never mentioned family. And now here was a brother showing up months after Thomas died, looking like he'd stepped out of a Philadelphia drawing room. The door opened before Matt could respond. Dia stood there with Sarah on her hip, and the moment she saw Pemberton, all the color drained from her face. Lawrence, she whispered. Hello, Dia. Pemberton's smile was cold. It's been a long time. Matt moved closer, positioning himself between Pemberton and Dia without thinking about it. Maybe we should talk about this inside, or better yet, at the sheriff's office. I don't think that's necessary, Pemberton said. This is a family matter. I'm not family anymore, Dia said. Her voice was steady, but Matt could hear the fear underneath. Thomas died. That ended any connection between us. Not quite. Pemberton reached into his coat and pulled out a folded paper. Thomas owed me money, quite a lot of money actually, $5,000 to be exact, and according to territorial law, his debts passed to his widow. Matt felt rage flash hot through his chest. You came here to collect a debt from a widow with a baby. I came here to collect what I'm owed, Pemberton said calmly. Thomas borrowed that money 2 years ago, promised to pay it back within 6 months. He never did. Now he's dead, and the debt remains. I don't have $5,000, Dia said. I don't have $5. Everything Thomas had, he lost gambling or spent on whiskey. Then you'll have to find another way to pay. Pemberton's eyes moved over her in a way that made Matt's hands curl into fists. Perhaps we could come to an arrangement. Get out, Matt said. His voice was low and dangerous. Get out now before I arrest you for harassment. On what grounds? Pemberton smiled. I'm conducting legitimate business. I have documentation signed by Thomas himself. Unless you're suggesting I forged my own brother's signature, I'm suggesting you leave Mrs. Carter alone. And who are you exactly? The local deputy playing hero. Pemberton's smile widened. How noble. But this doesn't concern you, deputy. This is between me and my sister-in-law. Former sister-in-law, Dia said. And I'm telling you the same thing he is. Leave, now. Pemberton folded the paper carefully and put it back in his coat. I'll give you 1 week to think about my offer, Dia. 1 week to decide how you're going to handle this debt. Because if you don't pay, I'll have no choice but to take legal action. And trust me, you don't want that. He tipped his hat, smiled that cold smile, and walked away. Matt watched him go, every muscle in his body tense with the urge to follow and do something he'd probably regret. When Pemberton was finally out of sight, Matt turned to Dia. She was shaking, Sarah was crying, and Dia's face had gone from pale to gray. Come on, Matt said gently, let's get you inside. He guided her into the room and closed the door. Dia thumbed down hard on the bed, still holding Sarah, her whole body trembling. He's lying, she said. He has to be lying. Thomas never mentioned borrowing money from Lawrence. Did Thomas talk about his family much? Never. I met Lawrence once at our wedding. He gave us $50 as a gift, and then I never saw him again. Thomas said they didn't get along, that Lawrence disapproved of him coming west. Matt knelt in front of her. Did Thomas have debts? Other ones? Yes, everywhere. The general store here, the saloon, probably half the businesses in 3 counties. Dia's voice cracked. But $5,000, Matt, that's impossible. How could Thomas even borrow that much? If Pemberton's rich enough, he could have loaned it easy. Question is whether he actually did. What do I do? Dia looked at him with desperate eyes. I don't have that kind of money. I'll never have that kind of money. Teaching pays $40 a month. It would take me years to pay off $5,000, and that's assuming I could save every penny. We'll figure it out, Matt said firmly. But first, I need to talk to Burke, see if there's a legal way to challenge this. And if there's not, Matt reached up and took her free hand. Then we'll figure that out too, but you're not facing this alone, Dia. I promise you that. Sarah had stopped crying and was now just whimpering against her mother's shoulder. Dia kissed the top of her baby's head, tears running down her own face. Why? She whispered. Why does everything keep getting worse? I thought we'd finally caught a break. I thought things were getting better. They are getting better, Matt said. This is just one more thing to get through, and we will get through it. How can you be so sure? Because I've seen you survive worse, because you're stronger than you think, and because I'm not letting anyone hurt you or Sarah, not Pemberton, not anyone. Dia looked at him for a long moment. Then she leaned forward and pressed her forehead against his. What did I do to deserve you? She whispered. Screamed loud enough for me to hear, Matt said, and felt her laugh despite everything. He stayed with her until she stopped shaking, until Sarah fell asleep, until Dia's breathing evened out. Then he went to find Burke. The sheriff was in his office, and his expression darkened when Matt told him about Pemberton's visit. $5,000, Burke said. That's a hell of a debt. Is it even legitimate? Can he actually collect from her? Burke sighed and pulled out a law book from his desk. If he has documentation signed by Thomas, yes, wife inherits husband's debts along with his assets. And since Thomas didn't have any assets, she's stuck with the debt. Legally, yes. Burke flipped through pages. But there are ways to challenge it. We'd need to verify the loan actually happened, that the documentation is authentic, that Pemberton has legal standing to collect. How long would that take? Months, maybe longer, and it would require a lawyer, which costs money Dia doesn't have. Burke looked up. I'm sorry, Matt. I don't see a good way out of this. Matt felt helpless in a way he hadn't felt since the war. There has to be something. There might be one option. Burke closed the book. If Dia could prove the loan was fraudulent, that Thomas was coerced or tricked into signing, then the debt could be forgiven. How would she prove that? Witnesses, documentation, evidence that Pemberton has a history of predatory lending. Burke shook his head. It's a long shot. Matt stood up. Then I better start looking. He spent the next 3 days asking questions. Talked to everyone who'd known Thomas, everyone who'd done business with him. Nobody remembered Thomas mentioning a loan from his brother. Nobody remembered him having $5,000 at any point. But nobody could prove he hadn't borrowed it either. On the 4th day, Matt rode to the nearest telegraph office and sent a message to Philadelphia to the address on Pemberton's documentation. Asked about Lawrence Pemberton, his business dealings, his reputation. The response came back 2 days later. Pemberton known for questionable loans, multiple complaints filed, no convictions. Family has money and influence. Proceed with caution. Matt showed the telegram to Burke. It's not enough, the sheriff said. It suggests Pemberton's shady, but it doesn't prove this particular loan is fraudulent. So what do? We talk to Pemberton, see if he's willing to negotiate. They found Pemberton at the hotel, drinking expensive whiskey in the small dining room. He smiled when he saw them coming. Gentlemen, he said, come to discuss business. We want to talk about the loan, Burke said, sitting down without being invited. $5,000 seems excessive. It's what Thomas borrowed. We'd like to see proof, Matt said. Original documentation, not just a copy. Pemberton's smile tightened. I don't have to show you anything. The law is on my side. The law also allows for investigation of fraud, Burke said calmly, especially when it involves predatory lending practices. For the first time, Pemberton's smile faltered. Are you accusing me of fraud, Sheriff? I'm saying we have questions, and until those questions are answered to our satisfaction, I'm advising Mrs. Carter not to pay a single cent. Pemberton set down his glass carefully. That would be unwise. For all of you. Is that a threat? Matt asked. It's a statement of fact. I have resources you can't imagine, Deputy. Lawyers, connections, influence. If I have to, I'll drag this through every court in the territory, and I'll make sure everyone knows that Mrs. Carter is a debtor who refuses to honor her husband's obligations. He leaned forward. Do you know what that would do to her reputation, to her teaching position, to her chances of ever making a decent life here? Matt felt rage surge through him so strong he had to grip the edge of the table to keep from lunging across it. Burke put a hand on Matt's arm. We're done here, the sheriff said. But understand this, Mr. Pemberton, you make one move against Mrs. Carter that we can prove is illegal or fraudulent, and I will arrest you. Resources and influence won't mean much when you're sitting in my jail. They left before Matt could do something stupid. Outside, he turned to Burke. He's going to destroy her. Not if we can help it. How you said it yourself, legally he has the upper hand. Burke was quiet for a moment. Then he said, there might be one other option, but it's risky and it would require Dia to trust you completely. What option? Marriage. Matt stopped walking. What if Dia remarries her new husband, assumes responsibility for her debts, but he also has the legal standing to challenge them? And more importantly, a husband can't be compelled to testify against his wife and vice versa. It would make it much harder for Pemberton to build a case. Matt's heart was pounding. You're saying I should marry her. I'm saying it's an option, one that would protect her legally and financially. Burke met his eyes. But only if that's something you'd actually want, not just as a legal maneuver. Matt thought about Dia, about the way she laughed when Sarah did something funny, about the way she'd kissed his cheek that night, about the way his whole chest went warm when she smiled at him. He'd already known he was going to marry her someday. He just hadn't expected someday to come so soon. I need to talk to her, he said. Better do it fast. Pemberton gave her a week and we're already 4 days in. Matt found Dia at the schoolhouse cleaning up after her students had left. She looked up when he walked in and her smile faded when she saw his expression. What's wrong? She asked. We need to talk about Pemberton. Did you find something? Can we prove the loan is fake? No. Matt closed the schoolhouse door. But there might be another way to protect you. He told her everything. About the investigation, about Pemberton's threats, about Burke's suggestion. Dia listened without interrupting, her face going paler with each word. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. You're asking me to marry you, she said finally. I'm giving you an option, one that would protect you and Sarah legally. As a business arrangement. Matt crossed the room to stand in front of her. No, not as a business arrangement. Dia looked up at him. Then what? As a marriage. A real one, because He stopped, took a breath. Because I'm in love with you, Dia. I have been for weeks now, maybe since the moment I pulled you out of that rubble. I was going to ask you someday anyway when the time was right. This just moves up the timeline. Dia's eyes filled with tears. You love me, yes. Even though I come with a baby and debts, and a dead husband's family trying to destroy me. Especially because of all that, because you face it all and you're still standing, still fighting, still beautiful. Matt reached out and touched her face. I love you, Dia Carter, and if you'll have me, I want to marry you. Not just to protect you from Pemberton, though that's a damn good reason, but because I want to build a life with you. Want to be Sarah's father. Want to wake up next to you every morning and know I get to do it again the next day. The tears spilled over. Dia let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. This is insane, she said. We've known each other 3 months. I know. People will talk. They'll say I trapped you, that I'm using you. Let them talk. I don't care. Matt, do you love me? He asked. Because if you don't tell me now, tell me this is just gratitude or convenience or fear, and I'll walk away. I'll find another way to help you. But if there's even a chance you feel what I feel. Dia kissed him. It wasn't gentle or tentative. It was desperate and fierce and full of everything they'd both been holding back for weeks. Matt's arms came around her and he pulled her close, and for a moment the whole world narrowed to just this. Her mouth on his, her hands fisted in his shirt, her heartbeat against his chest. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dia pressed her forehead to his. I love you, she whispered out. God help me, I love you so much it terrifies me. Then marry me. When? Tomorrow, today, right now, if the preacher's available. Dia laughed, and it was the most beautiful sound Matt had ever heard. Tomorrow, she said. Let's get married tomorrow. They told Burke that night, and the sheriff just grinned and said he'd expected this. They told Mrs. Chen, who cried and hugged them both and immediately started planning. They told Miss Walsh, who squeezed Dia's hands and said, about time. The only person they didn't tell was Pemberton. Let him find out after Burke said. Let him show up expecting to collect and find out his leverage had disappeared. The wedding was small. Just Burke and Mrs. Chen and Miss Walsh in the church, with Reverend Potter performing the ceremony. Dia wore a simple blue dress Mrs. Chen had helped her press. Matt wore his best shirt and his deputy's badge. Sarah was there too, fussing in Mrs. Chen's arms until the moment Matt and Dia exchanged vows. Then the baby went quiet, like even she knew this was important. "Do you, Matthew Rhodes, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" Reverend Potter asked. "I do," Matt said, and his voice was steady. "Do you, Dia Carter, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Dia looked at Matt, and her smile was radiant. "I do." "Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you man and wife. You may kiss your bride." Matt kissed her soft and slow, and when they pulled apart, Dia was crying again. "Happy tears," he whispered. "The happiest," she said. They signed the marriage license with Burke and Mrs. Chen as witnesses. Matt Rhodes and Dia Rhodes legally bound now for better or worse. Matt looked at that signature Dia Rhodes and felt something settle in his chest, something that had been restless and searching for 6 years. He'd found his home, finally, in this woman and her baby and this small Montana town. They were walking out of the church when they saw Pemberton standing across the street. He must have heard somehow, must have found out about the wedding, because the look on his face was pure fury. He crossed the street fast, his expensive boots kicking up dust. "What have you done?" he demanded, looking between Matt and Dia. "Got married," Matt said calmly. "As of about 5 minutes ago, Dia is my wife, which means her debts are now my debts, and I'm choosing not to pay them. You can't." "I can, and I am." Matt stepped forward, putting himself between Pemberton and Dia. "Whatever Thomas owed you, if he owed you anything at all, it's gone now. You want a challenge that, you take it up with a judge. But I'm guessing once a judge starts looking into your lending practices, you won't want that kind of scrutiny." Pemberton's face went red. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." "Neither do you." Matt's voice went cold. "I spent 4 years in a war killing men who threatened people I cared about. I've spent 6 years trying to forget how to do that. But if you go anywhere near my wife or my daughter, I will remember real quick, and you won't like what happens next." For a long moment, Pemberton just stared at him. Then his eyes shifted to Dia. "You think you've won," he said, "but you've just tied yourself to a man you barely know. When this falls apart, and it will, you'll have nothing, not even the sympathy you have now." "I'll have everything that matters," Dia said quietly. She moved to Matt's side and took his hand. "I'll have a husband who loves me, a daughter with a father, a life I chose instead of one I was trapped in. That's more than I had with your brother. That's more than you could ever understand." Pemberton looked like he wanted to say more, but Burke stepped up beside Matt, hand resting casually on his gun. "I think you're done here," the sheriff said. "Might be time for you to head back east." Pemberton looked at all of them, Matt, Dia, Burke, Mrs. Chen, and Miss Walsh, standing in the church doorway. He was outnumbered, and he knew it. "This isn't over," he said. "Yeah, it is," Matt replied. "You just don't know it yet." Pemberton turned and walked to his horse, mounted up, rode out of Silver Creek without looking back. They watched him until he was just a speck on the horizon. "Think he'll come back?" Burke asked. "No," Matt said. "Men like that only fight battles they can win. He knows he lost this one." Dia leaned against Matt, and he wrapped his arm around her. "Is it really over?" she asked. "It's really over." "Then what happens now?" Matt looked down at her, at his wife, at the woman he'd pulled from the rubble 3 months ago, the woman who'd saved him just as much as he'd saved her. "Now," he said, "we build a life together." Mrs. Chen insisted on hosting a wedding dinner that night at her boarding house. She cooked enough food for 20 people, even though there were only 6 of them, and she kept pressing more onto everyone's plates while wiping tears from her eyes. "So happy," she kept saying. "Such a good match. I knew from the beginning." "Did you?" Dia asked, smiling. "Of course, the way he looked at you, the way you looked at him. Some things are obvious to everyone except the 2 people involved." Matt felt his face heat, but he didn't deny it. After dinner, Miss Walsh pulled Dia aside while Matt held Sarah. "You did good," the older woman said, "marrying him." I love him, Dia said simply. I know, but more than that, you chose well. That man will stand by you through anything. I've seen a lot of people come and go in this town, and I can tell who'll last. You two will last. Dia hugged her, and Matt saw tears in both their eyes. Burke shook Matt's hand before leaving. You know this means you're stuck here now, the sheriff said. Can't go wandering off when you've got a wife and baby. Good, Matt said. I'm done wandering. Think you can handle domestic life after all those years alone? Matt looked over at Dia, who was laughing at something Mrs. Chen said while holding Sarah. Yeah, he said quietly. I think I can handle it just fine. When everyone finally left and they were alone in Dia's room, their room now, they stood facing each other, suddenly shy. So, Dia said, we're married. We are. That happened fast. Are you having regrets? Matt asked, and he couldn't quite keep the fear out of his voice. No, God, no. Dia stepped closer. I'm trying to believe this is real, that you're real, that I get to have this. Matt reached out and cupped her face in his hands. It's real, I'm real, and you get to have this for as long as you want it. What if I want it forever? Then you're stuck with me forever. Dia smiled and kissed him, and this time it was soft and slow and full of promise. When they pulled apart, she said, I should warn you, Sarah wakes up 3 times a night, sometimes 4. I can handle it. And I've never been good at letting people help me. I'm going to try to do everything myself. Then I'll learn to help anyway. And sometimes I get scared that this is all going to fall apart, that I'm going to wake up and you'll be gone. Matt pulled her close, tucked her head under his chin. I'm not going anywhere, Dia. Not tonight, not tomorrow, not ever. You're stuck with me now, for better or worse. Definitely better, she whispered. They stood like that for a long time, just holding each other while Sarah slept in her cradle and the Montana night settled outside the window. Matt thought about the day he'd heard that scream, about how close he'd come to just riding past, about how different his life would be now if he had. He'd thought he was done with caring, done with connection, done with anything that could hurt him. But standing here holding his wife, listening to his daughter breathe, Matt realized something. The pain of loss was terrible. He knew that better than most, but the pain of never loving anyone, never letting anyone in, never taking the risk that was worse. That was a kind of death you live through every single day. He'd been dying for 6 years, but 3 months ago he'd heard a woman scream and he'd stopped. He'd dug through rubble until his hands bled. He'd saved 2 lives, and in the process he'd saved his own. Their first morning as husband and wife started at 3 in the morning with Sarah screaming. Matt jolted awake, disoriented, reaching for his gun before he remembered where he was. Dia was already moving, stumbling out of bed toward the cradle, her hair loose and wild in the darkness. I've got her, Matt said, but Dia had already scooped Sarah up. She's hungry, Dia said, her voice thick with exhaustion. Go back to sleep. I'm awake now. Matt lit the lamp and warm light filled the room. Dia sat in the chair with Sarah and Matt could see the fatigue etched into her face. How long has she been waking up this often? Since she was born. Dia adjusted Sarah, wincing. It's normal, babies do this. Every night, every night. Matt watched her for a moment, this woman he'd married yesterday, and felt something fierce and protective rise in his chest. Then from now on, I take the first wake-up. You take the second. We split them. Matt, you have to work. So do you. We're partners now, Dia. That means we share everything, including the middle of the night baby duty. Dia looked at him, and her eyes were shining with tears. I've been doing this alone for so long. You're not alone anymore. She reached out her free hand, and Matt took it, holding on while Sarah nursed, and the night stretched quiet around them. When Sarah finally fell back asleep, Dia put her in the cradle and crawled back into bed beside Matt. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For meaning it. When you said, for better or worse, I think the worst is going to involve a lot of sleepless nights. Matt pulled her close. Then I guess we better get used to being tired together. He felt her smile against his chest, and within minutes, she was asleep. Matt lay awake a little longer, listening to his wife breathe and his daughter's soft snores from the cradle, and thought that he'd never been so tired or so happy in his entire life. The town's reaction to their marriage was mixed. Most people were genuinely happy for them. Mrs. Chen told everyone who came into the general store about her dear friend's wedding. Miss Walsh made sure all the parents knew that Mrs. Rhodes, not Carter, anymore, Rhodes was still the teacher and doing an excellent job. Burke spread the word at the saloon that anyone who had a problem with the marriage could take it up with him. But there were whispers, too. Matt heard them when he walked the streets on patrol, saw the looks some of the older women gave Dia when she walked to the schoolhouse, felt the judgment hanging in the air like smoke. Married awful fast, didn't they? Poor Thomas not even cold in the ground. She must have trapped him somehow, got herself a new man before the old one's debts could catch up with her. It made Matt's blood boil, but Dia took it in stride. Let them talk, she said one evening when Matt came home angry after overhearing Mrs. Patterson gossiping at the general store. We know the truth. The people who matter know the truth. The rest of them will either come around or they won't. It's not fair to you. Life's not fair, Matt. You know that better than anyone. Dia was making dinner, or trying to, with Sarah fussing on her hip. What matters is that we're happy. Are you happy? Matt looked around their small room, at the cradle in the corner, at the table where they ate meals together, at his wife, flower on her face and love in her eyes. Yeah, he said, I'm happy. Then that's enough. But 3 weeks into their marriage, the whispers turned into something worse. Matt was at the sheriff's office when Patterson the blacksmith came storming in with his wife trailing behind him, looking mortified. I want her removed, Patterson said without preamble. Burke looked up from his desk. Want who removed from what? That woman, Mrs. Rhodes. I want her removed from the school. Matt's hands clenched into fists. Watch how you talk about my wife. Your wife, Patterson sneered, has been filling my children's heads with nonsense. What nonsense? Burke asked calmly. She's been teaching them about women's rights, about voting and property ownership and suffrage. Patterson spat the word like it was poison. My daughter came home yesterday asking why her mother can't own land. My son asked why women can't vote. This is what she's teaching instead of proper lessons. She's teaching them civics, Matt said. That's part of the curriculum. She's teaching them rebellion, and I won't have it. Either she goes or I'm pulling my children from that school. Mrs. Patterson spoke up, then her voice quiet but firm. James, that's enough. Stay out of this, Margaret. No. Mrs. Patterson stepped forward. I won't stay out of it. Mrs. Rhodes has been nothing but kind to our children. Mary can read now, actually read, not just memorize. And Thomas understands mathematics better than he ever has. If she's also teaching them to think for themselves, to question the world, then good. That's what education should do. Patterson's face went red. You're my wife. Yes, I am, and as your wife, I'm telling you that you're being a fool. Mrs. Patterson looked at Burke. Mrs. Rhodes is an excellent teacher. She doesn't deserve this. Thank you, Margaret, Burke said. Then he turned to Patterson. I'm not removing Mrs. Rhodes from her position. She was hired by the school board, and unless they decide otherwise, she stays. Then I'll go to the school board. I'll get signatures. I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of woman she really is. And what kind of woman is that? Matt asked. His voice was dangerously quiet. The kind who trapped a good man into marriage to save her own skin. The kind who's using her position to spread dangerous ideas. The kind who... Matt was across the room before Patterson could finish grabbing the bigger man by his shirt and slamming him against the wall. Matt, Burke shouted, but Matt barely heard him. You want to question her teaching? Fine, You want to pull your kids, that's your right. But you do not get to stand in this office and slander my wife. You understand me?" Patterson's eyes were wide with fear now. "You're crazy." "No, I'm protective. And if I hear you spreading lies about Dia again, if I hear you've been talking to other parents trying to turn them against her, I will make your life very difficult. We clear?" "Matt, let him go," Burke said, and this time his voice had steel in it. Matt released Patterson, who stumbled away, rubbing his throat. "Get out," Burke said to the blacksmith. "And Margaret, thank you for speaking up." Mrs. Patterson nodded and ushered her husband out. When they were gone, Burke turned to Matt. "That was stupid," the sheriff said. "I know. He could file charges, assault on a citizen by a deputy." "I know," Burke sighed, "but I understand why you did it. Still, you need to control yourself, Matt. You can't threaten everyone who says something bad about Dia." "Why not?" "Because it'll make things worse for her, not better. People will say she needs her husband to fight her battles, that she can't stand on her own." Matt knew Burke was right, but it didn't make him feel any better. "So what do I do? You trust that Dia can handle herself, and you be there to support her when she needs it, not to fight her fights for her." That night, Matt told Dia what had happened. He expected her to be upset, maybe angry at Patterson, maybe worried about her job. Instead, she laughed. "You slammed him against a wall," she asked, her eyes dancing. "It wasn't funny, Dia. Burke's right. I made things worse. Maybe, or maybe Patterson needed to know that I'm not alone, that I have someone who'll stand up for me." Dia moved closer, wrapped her arms around Matt's waist. "I can fight my own battles, Matt. I've been doing it for years, but it's nice knowing I don't have to anymore. Burke said people might think you're weak, that you need me to defend you. Let them think what they want. I know I'm not weak. You know I'm not weak. That's what matters." Matt looked down at her, at this woman who'd survived a collapsed building and a dead husband and a predatory brother-in-law, and now narrow-minded parents trying to destroy her livelihood, and he thought Burke was wrong. Dia wasn't just strong, she was the strongest person he'd ever met. "I love you," he said. "I know you threaten blacksmiths for me." Dia stood on her toes and kissed him. "Now stop worrying. Patterson's not going to do anything." But she was wrong. 2 days later, Patterson showed up at the schoolhouse with 4 other parents and a petition. They wanted Dia removed as teacher, and they had 15 signatures to back it up. Matt heard about it from Burke, who'd heard it from Miss Walsh, who'd been at the schoolhouse when it happened. "How did Dia react?" Matt asked, already heading for the door. Matt, wait, but he was already running through Silver Creek streets toward the schoolhouse. He burst through the door to find Dia standing in front of her desk, face pale but chin up, while Patterson and his group stood in a half-circle facing her. "Understand your concerns," Dia was saying, her voice steady, "but I can assure you that my curriculum meets all territorial standards. Standards written by men who want to corrupt traditional values," one of the mothers said. "We won't have our children exposed to such ideas." "Ideas like reading and mathematics?" Dia asked. "Or are you specifically objecting to me teaching your daughters that they're just as capable as your sons?" "We're objecting to you teaching them to be dissatisfied with their proper place." Matt started forward, but a hand on his arm stopped him. Mrs. Chen had appeared beside him, and she shook her head slightly. "Let her handle this," Mrs. Chen whispered. "She needs to." Matt forced himself to stay still and watch. "Let me ask you something," Dia said to the parents. "How many of you can read?" Silence. "I can," one of the fathers said defensively. "And you, Mrs. Williams, can you read?" The woman shifted uncomfortably. "Some." "And you, Mr. Patterson, how's your arithmetic?" Patterson's face reddened. "Good enough." "Is it because, according to Mr. Chen at the general store, you've been shortchanging him on your bills for months? Not because you're dishonest, but because you can't calculate the totals correctly." Dia's voice was gentle but firm. "Education isn't about corrupting values. It's about giving people the tools to live better lives, to not be cheated, to understand contracts and prices, and their own rights under the law. And that's different. It's not different. It's exactly the same. And if you pull your children from school because you're afraid they'll learn to think for themselves, then you're not protecting them. You're crippling them. The room was silent for a long moment. Then Mrs. Patterson spoke up. She's right, James. You know she's right. Margaret, our daughter can read now, actually read. She reads to me every night, and it's— Mrs. Patterson's voice cracked. It's wonderful. I never learned properly, and I always wished I had. Mrs. Rhodes is giving our children something we never got. Why would we take that away from them? Another mother stepped forward. My son has been doing so much better in school since Mrs. Rhodes started teaching. He actually wants to learn now before he just sat there bored. And my daughter, another father added quietly, she talks about becoming a teacher herself someday because of Mrs. Rhodes, because she has an example now of what a woman can do. One by one, the other parents in the group started nodding, looking uncomfortable. Patterson looked around at his allies deserting him, and his face went hard. You're all fools. She's manipulating you just like she manipulated that deputy into marrying her. That's when Matt moved. He didn't slam Patterson against the wall this time. He just walked up to the man, looked him in the eye, and said very quietly, My wife didn't manipulate anyone. She saved my life just as much as I saved hers. And if you can't see how lucky these children are to have her as their teacher, then you're not just a fool. You're blind. Patterson opened his mouth, then closed it, looked at the other parents, saw no support there, and stormed out. The remaining parents apologized to Dia, some of them with tears in their eyes. They left one by one until only Matt, Dia, and Mrs. Chen remained. Dia sat down at her desk and put her head in her hands. Are you okay? Matt asked, moving to her side. I'm fine, She looked up at him. I thought I was going to lose this, the teaching, the one thing I'm good at. You're good at a lot of things, but this is mine. This is the thing I chose, that I worked for, that makes me feel like I'm making a difference. Dia's voice shook, and they almost took it away because I dared to teach their daughters that they matter. Mrs. Chen came over and put her hand on Dia's shoulder. They didn't take it. You stood up for yourself and you won. With help. Dia looked at Matt. You came. Of course I came. But you let me handle it. You didn't fight for me. You just stood with me. She stopped, tears spilling over. That's exactly what I needed. Matt knelt beside her chair and took her hands. I'm learning how to support you without smothering you, how to be your partner instead of your protector. It's new for me too. You're doing good, Dia whispered. Really good. Mrs. Chen discreetly left, and Matt held Dia while she cried out the fear and stress and relief. When she finally pulled herself together, she looked at him with swollen eyes and a watery smile. This is harder than I thought it would be, she said. What is being married to you, not because of you, she added quickly, but because I spent so long learning to stand alone that sometimes I forget I don't have to anymore. And then I get scared that I'm depending on you too much, that I'm losing myself. You could never lose yourself, Dia. You're too strong for that. But what if? No what ifs. Matt stood and pulled her to her feet. We figure this out as we go. Some days you'll need me more. Some days I'll need you more. Some days we'll both be a mess, and we'll muddle through together. That's what marriage is. Dia laughed despite herself. Is it? I think so. I'm new at this too, remember? We're quite a pair, aren't we? Two broken people trying to build something whole. Maybe we're not broken, Matt said. Maybe we're just scarred, and maybe that's okay. Dia kissed him, then soft and sweet, and when she pulled back, she said, Take me home. You sure it's only 3 o'clock? I'm sure I want to go home with my husband and hold my daughter and pretend the rest of the world doesn't exist for a few hours. So they went home, Sarah was with Mrs. Chen, who'd been watching her during school hours, and the older woman handed the baby over with a knowing smile. "You two need time," she said. "I keep Sarah tonight. You rest. Mrs. Chen, you don't have to." "I want to. She's no trouble. Go, be married couple for one evening." So they did. They went back to their room, and Matt built a fire while Dia made tea, and they just sat together in the quiet, not talking, just being. When the sun set and the room grew dark except for the firelight, Dia moved to sit beside Matt on the floor, her head on his shoulder. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked quietly, "stopping that day, coming into my life?" "Never. Not even when people gossip or judge or try to destroy what we have. Especially not then, because it means what we have is worth destroying. It means we've built something real." Dia turned to look at him. "I was so angry when Thomas left that last time. So angry and so tired and so done with hoping things would get better, and then the cabin collapsed and I thought, this is it. This is how my story ends, crushed under the weight of a broken dream in the middle of nowhere." "But it didn't end," Matt said. "No, because you heard me scream, because you stopped, because you dug through rubble until your hands bled to save someone you didn't even know." She touched his face. "You gave me a second chance at everything, Matt. At life, at love, at believing that good things could happen to me. You gave me the same thing. I just didn't know I needed it until I found you." They made love that night for the first time since the wedding, slow and careful and full of all the things they hadn't said yet. Afterward, lying tangled together in the darkness, Matt felt something settle in his chest, something that had been restless and searching for 6 years. Peace. He'd found peace in this woman's arms, in this small room, in this life they were building one day at a time. "I love you," he whispered into her hair. "I love you too," she whispered back. "Thank you for saving me. Thank you for saving me back." The weeks turned into months, and their life together found its rhythm. Matt worked his deputy shifts, walking Silver Creek streets and keeping the peace. Dia taught her students, and gradually even the parents who'd been skeptical came around. Sarah grew bigger and stronger, starting to smile and babble and reach for Matt whenever he came home. They had their struggles nights when Sarah wouldn't stop crying, and they were both so exhausted they could barely speak. Days when money was tight and they had to choose between new shoes for Dia or meat for dinner. Moments when Matt's past would rise up and he'd wake from nightmares sweating and shaking, and Dia would hold him until the ghosts faded. But they had joy too. Sunday dinners with Burke and Mrs. Chen, long walks through Silver Creek with Sarah bundled between them, quiet evenings by the fire while Dia corrected papers and Matt cleaned his gun and Sarah played with wooden blocks on the floor, small moments that added up to a life. Winter came early that year, and with it, a letter. It arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, delivered by the mail coach from the east. Matt brought it home and found Dia in their room with Sarah, both of them napping together on the bed. He almost didn't wake her, almost put the letter aside and let her rest. But something about the handwriting made him pause, neat and feminine, with a return address in Pennsylvania. "Dia," he said softly, touching her shoulder, "there's a letter for you." She woke slowly, blinking in confusion, careful not to disturb Sarah. "A letter from who?" "I don't know. Pennsylvania address." Dia took the envelope and Matt saw her face change as she recognized the handwriting. "It's from my mother." She opened it, carefully read in silence while Matt watched her expression shift from surprise to joy to tears. "What is it?" he asked. "Is everything okay?" Dia's voice broke. "She wants to come visit. In the spring. She wants to meet Sarah and you. She wants to meet my husband." "That's good, isn't it? It's wonderful. I haven't seen her since Thomas and I left Pennsylvania. I wrote to her when he died, but I was so afraid she'd be angry, that she'd blame me for everything going wrong." "What does she say?" Dia read aloud, her voice shaking. "My dearest Dia, I received your letter about Thomas's passing and your remarriage. I cannot say I am surprised about Thomas. I never trusted that man, though I held my tongue because you seemed happy. But I am overjoyed to hear you've found someone who treats you well. Your father and I always hoped you would find real love, not just pretty words and empty promises. We want to come see you in the spring and meet our granddaughter, and we want to meet this Matthew Rhodes who saved our daughter's life. With all my love, Mother. Matt felt a lump in his throat. She sounds like a good woman. She is. Dia looked at him, tears streaming down her face. She's going to love you, Matt. I know she will. I hope so. I'd like to make a good impression on my mother-in-law. Dia laughed and cried at the same time, and Sarah woke up and started fussing, and Matt scooped his daughter up while Dia reread the letter 3 more times. That night, after Sarah was asleep and they were lying in bed together, Dia said, "I'm happy. Right now, in this moment, I'm completely happy." Matt pulled her closer. "Me too. I never thought I'd be able to say that again. After everything with Thomas, after losing the cabin, after thinking Sarah and I would be alone forever, I never thought I'd feel this way again." "What way?" "Safe, loved, like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." She turned to look at him in the darkness. "You did that, Matt. You gave me that. We did it together. No, you started it when you heard me scream, and you could have kept riding, but you didn't. That's where this all began, with you choosing to stop." Matt thought about that day, how close he'd come to ignoring that scream, to convincing himself it wasn't his problem. How different both their lives would be if he had. "I'm glad I stopped," he said quietly. "I'm glad I dug through that rubble. I'm glad I found you. Even though it turned your whole life upside down, especially because of that. My life needed turning upside down. I was just existing before Dia, just moving through days without living them. You changed that, you and Sarah." Dia kissed him, and it tasted like tears and love and coming home. "We're going to be okay," she whispered. "Aren't we?" "Yeah," Matt said. "We're going to be okay." And lying there in the darkness with his wife in his arm and his daughter sleeping nearby, Matt Rhodes believed it completely. He'd spent 6 years running from the past, convinced that caring about anyone would only lead to more loss. But Dia had taught him something different. She'd taught him that love wasn't about avoiding pain, it was about choosing connection despite the risk. It was about building something worth fighting for, even when you knew it could be taken away. He'd saved her life that day when the cabin collapsed, but the truth was she'd saved his too. She'd pulled him out of his own rubble, the grief and guilt and loneliness he'd been buried under for years. She'd given him a reason to stop running, to plant roots, to hope again, and that was worth everything. Matt fell asleep that night thinking about spring, about meeting Dia's parents, about watching Sarah take her first steps, about all the ordinary, extraordinary moments that made up a life shared with someone you loved. He dreamed of Caroline again, but this time when she appeared, she was smiling. "You did good, Matt," she said. "You finally did good." And when he woke the next morning to Sarah's cry and Dia's sleepy grumble and the cold Montana dawn creeping through the window, Matt Rhodes thought, yeah, I really did. Spring came to Montana with a violence that surprised even the old-timers. The snow melted in great rushing torrents, turning Silver Creek into a muddy mess and flooding the low-lying farms. Matt spent 3 days helping sandbag the Patterson place. The blacksmith had apologized months ago, and Matt had accepted, and came home each night exhausted and covered in mud. Dia would heat water for him to wash, and Sarah, now almost a year old and trying to walk, would toddle over and pat his wet boots with her small hands, babbling nonsense that somehow sounded like conversation. "She thinks she's helping," Dia said, watching with amusement as Sarah very seriously touched Matt's knee. "She is helping," Matt said, scooping his daughter up despite his muddy state. Sarah squealed with delight and Dia laughed, and Matt thought that this right here was what happiness looked like. But underneath the contentment he could feel Dia's nervousness growing as her parents' visit approached. "What if they don't like you?" she asked one night while they were lying in bed. "Then they don't like me won't change how I feel about you." But it matters, Matt. They're my parents. I want them to see that I'm happy that I made the right choice. Did you make the right choice? Dia turned to face him in the darkness. You know I did. Then that's all that matters. Everything else is just noise. But he understood her worry. He was nervous too, though he'd never admit it. What if Dia's parents took one look at him and saw exactly what he was, a broken soldier with ghosts in his eyes and blood on his hands? What if they thought their daughter deserved better? The day Dia's parents arrived, Matt made sure he was wearing his best shirt and his deputy's badge was polished. He met them at the stage stop with Dia and Sarah and watched as an older couple stepped down from the coach. Dia's mother was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes that looked exactly like her daughter's. Her father was tall and weathered with the bearing of a man who'd worked hard all his life. When they saw Dia, both of them started crying. My baby, Dia's mother said, pulling her daughter into a fierce hug. My sweet girl. Her father was gentler, but his hand shook as he held Dia's face and looked at her like he was memorizing every detail. You look good, he said finally. Better than the last time we saw you. I am better, Papa. Then Dia's mother turned to Matt, and he felt himself being examined with the thoroughness only a mother could manage. So you're Matthew Rhodes, she said. Yes, ma'am. It's an honor to meet you. He pulled you out of the collapsed cabin, Dia's father said, shaking Matt's hand. The letter said you dug with your bare hands until they bled. Anyone would have done the same. No, Dia's mother said firmly. Not anyone. Most men would have ridden past. You didn't. You stopped. You saved our daughter and our granddaughter. She stepped forward and without warning hugged Matt hard. He stood there awkwardly for a moment before carefully putting his arms around her. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for bringing her back to us. When she pulled away, Matt saw tears on her face. Dia's father shook his hand again harder this time, and Matt saw the same thing in both their eyes, gratitude mixed with grief for what had almost been lost. Then Sarah, who'd been watching all this with wide eyes from Dia's arms, reached out toward Matt and said clearly, Papa. It was the first time she'd said it. Dia gasped. Matt felt his throat close up, and Dia's parents looked at each other with expressions that said everything would be all right. That night they had dinner at Mrs. Chen's boarding house, and Matt watched as Dia's parents slowly relaxed. Her mother fussed over Sarah, marveling at how big she'd gotten. Her father asked Matt about his work as deputy, about the town, about their life here. It's not what we imagined for Dia, her mother said quietly when Dia had taken Sarah to put her to bed. When she left for Montana with Thomas, we hoped she'd have an easier life, a beautiful home, security. I know I can't give her everything, Matt said. We don't have much, but what we have is real, and I love her more than I thought I could love anyone. Dia's father studied him. Thomas said pretty words too. I'm sure he did, but I'm not Thomas. I don't make promises I can't keep. I just show up every day for her and for Sarah. That's all I know how to do. That's everything, Dia's mother said softly. Showing up is everything. Later, when Dia's parents were settled in their room at the hotel and Matt and Dia were alone, she turned to him with tears streaming down her face. She called you Papa, Dia said. Sarah called you Papa. I heard. You're her father, Matt, not by blood, but by choice. By showing up every single day and loving her like she's yours. She is mine, Matt said. From the moment I pulled her out of that rubble, she was mine. Dia kissed him, then deep and desperate, and Matt held her tight and thought about how close they'd all come to never having this, to never having each other. Dia's parents stayed for 2 weeks, and in that time Matt watched his wife bloom in ways he'd never seen. She laughed more, worried less, moved through the world with a lightness that came from being seen and accepted by the people who'd raised her. Her father helped Matt build a small addition to their room, a separate space for Sarah, who was getting too big for the cradle. They worked side by side, and gradually the older man started talking about the war, about the things he'd seen, about coming home and trying to forget. "Dia told you about me," he said one afternoon, "about how I came back wrong. She mentioned it. I let it destroy me, let the ghosts win. Sat in that chair for 3 years, until my heart gave out from doing nothing but remembering." He paused in his hammering. "But you didn't do that. You kept moving, kept living, even when it hurt." "I almost didn't," Matt admitted. "I almost let it destroy me too. If I hadn't heard Dia scream that day, I probably would have." "But you did hear, and you stopped. That's the difference between us, son. When it mattered, you stopped running." They finished the addition, and Sarah got her own small bed that Matt had built with his own hands. The first night she slept in it, Dia cried. "She's growing up," she said. "She's not a baby anymore. She'll always be your baby." "I know, but I wanted to freeze time, keep her small and safe forever." Matt pulled Dia close. "We can't keep her safe forever, but we can love her and teach her and hope it's enough." "Is it enough?" "It's all any parent can do." The day before her parents were set to leave, Dia's mother took Matt aside while they were all at the general store. "I need to tell you something," she said, "about Thomas." Matt's stomach tightened. "All right. When Dia first brought him home, I knew he was wrong for her. He was too charming, too smooth, too full of big promises. But Dia was so happy, and I didn't want to be the mother who crushed her daughter's dreams." Her voice shook. "I've regretted that silence every day since they left for Montana. You couldn't have known how bad it would get. I knew enough. I knew men like Thomas don't change. They just find new ways to disappoint." She looked at Matt directly. "But you're not like him. I've watched you these 2 weeks. The way you look at Dia, the way you are with Sarah, the way you work and provide and show up without fanfare or expectation of praise. That's real, Matthew. That's what love actually looks like." Matt felt his throat tighten. "I'm trying my best. Your best is more than enough. And I want you to know I'm grateful. Not just that you saved their lives, but that you're building a life with them. You gave us our daughter back. The real Dia, the one we thought we'd lost when she married Thomas." "She saved me too," Matt said quietly. "She just doesn't know it." Dia's mother smiled. "Oh, I think she knows." When the stagecoach came to take them back east, the goodbyes were tearful but hopeful. "We'll come back next year," Dia's father promised, "and the year after that. We want to watch Sarah grow up, want to be part of her life." "You're always welcome," Matt said. "This is your home too." Dia's mother hugged them both one last time. "Take care of each other," she said. "And remember, you've already survived the worst. Everything from here is just living." They watched the coach disappear into the distance, and Dia turned to Matt with tears on her face, but a smile on her lips. "They loved you," she said. "My father told me last night that you're the son he always wanted. He said that he did, and my mother said I finally married the right man." Matt pulled her close. "I'm glad they came." "Me too. It feels complete now, like all the pieces of my life finally fit together." That summer, Silver Creek thrived. The floods had actually helped the farms, and the harvest was the best anyone could remember. Dia's students graduated to the next level, and the school board voted unanimously to keep her on permanently. Matt was offered a promotion to chief deputy when Burke announced he was planning to retire in a year. Life was good, simple, full of work and love and the small joys that made up a family. Sarah turned one, then started walking, then started talking in full sentences that amazed everyone. She had Dia's eyes and stubborn streak, but Matt's quiet thoughtfulness. She'd follow him around when he was home, chattering about her day, and Matt would listen like she was telling him the secrets of the universe. "You're good with her," Dia said one evening watching them play together. "She makes it easy." "No, you make it look easy, but I know it's not. I know you worry about being a good father." Matt was quiet for a moment. "Every day, I think about my own father, about how he taught me to work hard and stand up for what's right. And I think about Thomas, about everything he did wrong, and I try to find the middle ground. You're doing more than finding middle ground, Matt. You're being exactly the father she needs. 2 months later, Dia told him she was pregnant. They were sitting by the fire after Sarah had gone to bed, and Dia just said it straight out, no preamble. I'm going to have another baby. Matt's mind went blank for a moment. Then everything rushed in at once, joy and terror and wonder and fear all mixed together. Are you sure? He asked. I'm sure, about 3 months along, I think. 3 months? How did I not? I wasn't sure myself until last week, and I wanted to be certain before I told you. Dia reached out and took his hand. Are you happy? Happy, Dia, He stopped, pulled her into his arms. I'm terrified and thrilled and so grateful I can barely breathe. She laughed against his chest. That's how I feel too. When early spring, probably, around the time we met 2 years ago. Matt pulled back to look at her. 2 years. Has it really only been 2 years? Feels like longer, doesn't it? Feels like forever. Like I can't remember what life was like before you. Good, Dia said, because I can't either. The pregnancy was harder this time. Dia was sick for months, could barely keep food down, and her body ached in ways it hadn't with Sarah. Matt took on more at home, cooking and cleaning and caring for Sarah while Dia rested. I'm sorry, she said one night after a particularly bad day. I'm supposed to be your partner, not your burden. You're not a burden. You're growing our child. That's the hardest work there is. Still, I feel useless. You're teaching 20 children while growing a baby. That's the opposite of useless. Matt brushed hair from her face. We're a team. Remember, some days you carry more. Some days I carry more. Right now, it's my turn. Winter came again, and with it complications. Dia started having pains in her 5th month, and Dr. Fisher ordered complete bed rest. No teaching, he said firmly. No standing for more than a few minutes. You need to rest or you'll lose this baby. Dia cried when Miss Walsh came to tell her they'd found a temporary replacement at the school. It's my job, she said. It's the one thing that's mine. It'll still be yours, Matt said, after the baby comes. But right now, Sarah and this new baby need you more than those students do. What if I'm not strong enough? What if something goes wrong? Then we handle it together like we handle everything. The next months were the hardest they'd faced. Dia was bedridden and miserable. Sarah didn't understand why Mama couldn't play anymore. Money was tight with only Matt's deputy salary, and Matt was exhausted from working full days and then coming home to care for everyone, but they made it work. Mrs. Chen brought meals. Burke gave Matt more flexible hours. The Patterson family, now completely won over, offered to watch Sarah during the day. The whole town rallied around them in ways that made Matt's chest tight with gratitude. Small towns take care of their own, Burke said when Matt tried to thank him, and you two are definitely our own now. In March, 2 weeks before Dia's due date, she went into labor. It was fast and brutal and terrifying. Dr. Fisher barely made it in time. Matt held Dia's hand while she screamed and pushed, remembering the day he'd pulled her from the rubble, thinking he might lose her all over again. I can't, Dia gasped between contractions. Matt, I can't. Yes, you can. You're the strongest person I know. You can do this. What if something goes wrong? What if You won't. I won't let you. You hear me? You're not leaving me, Dia Rhodes. We have too much life left to live. 8 odd hours after it started, their son was born. He came out screaming and red-faced and perfect, and when Dr. Fisher put him in Matt's arms, Matt felt something in his chest expand until he thought it might burst. You have a son, the doctor said, smiling. A healthy, strong son. Matt looked down at his child, his son, and felt tears running down his face. Dia, he said, turning so she could see. Look what we made. Dia was pale and exhausted, but her smile was radiant. He's beautiful. He's perfect. They named him William after Matt's father, Will for short, and from the moment Sarah met her baby brother, she was in love. Baby, she said reverently, touching his tiny hand with one careful finger. My baby. Our baby, Dia corrected gently. Your brother. Brother, Sarah repeated. Then with all the authority of a 2-year-old, I protect him. Matt looked at his family, his wife in bed holding their newborn son, his daughter standing guard beside them, and felt something settle in his chest that had been restless since the day he'd come home to ashes and graves in Virginia. This was what he'd been searching for without knowing it. Not just survival, but purpose. Not just existence, but meaning. Not just breathing, but living. What are you thinking? Dia asked softly. Matt sat on the edge of the bed, careful not to jostle her, put his arm around Sarah, looked at his wife and son. I'm thinking about the day I heard you scream, he said. About how close I came to just riding past. About how different our lives would be if I had. But you didn't. No, I stopped. And it saved us both. Dia reached for his hand. Do you remember what you said when you first pulled me out? I said you were safe. Before that, when I told you to save Sarah first, you said, you both live or none of us do, Matt finished. I remember. That's when I knew, Dia said. That's the moment I knew you were different, that you were someone who didn't give up, who didn't leave people behind. I'd left everyone behind for 6 years before that, but you came back. When it mattered most, when we needed you most, you came back. She squeezed his hand. You saved us, Matt, and we saved you right back. Matt looked at his family, at everything he'd almost missed, everything he'd almost lost by being too afraid to care, too broken to hope. He thought about Caroline, about his mother, about all the people he'd lost, and all the years he'd spent running. And he thought about the moment he'd heard that scream, the choice he'd made to stop the decision that had changed everything. I spent 6 years thinking I was broken beyond repair, he said quietly, thinking that caring about anyone would just lead to more loss. But you taught me something different. You taught me that love isn't about avoiding pain, it's about choosing connection despite the risk. It's about building something worth fighting for, even when you know it might be taken away. And was it worth it? Dia asked. All the risk. Matt looked at her, at his wife, the mother of his children, the woman who'd given him a reason to stop running. Looked at Sarah, who'd called him Papa before she knew any better. Looked at Will, sleeping peacefully in Dia's arms, a whole new life full of possibility. Yeah, he said, it was worth everything. The years passed the way years do, some fast, some slow, all of them building on each other like layers of bedrock. Matt became sheriff when Burke retired, and he was good at it, fair and firm and respected by everyone in town. Dia went back to teaching, and under her guidance, Silver Creek School became one of the best in the territory. Sarah grew up smart and fierce with her mother's teaching gift and her father's protective instincts. Will was quieter, more thoughtful, but just as strong in his own way. They added onto their house, bought a small piece of land on the edge of town, built a life one day at a time, one choice at a time, one moment at a time. There were hard days, times when money was tight, when sickness came, when the weight of responsibility felt crushing, days when Matt's nightmares returned and Dia had to talk him down from the darkness, days when Dia doubted herself, questioned if she was enough, and Matt had to remind her of everything she'd survived. But there were far more good days, days full of laughter and work and the small joys that made up a family. Sunday dinners, birthday celebrations, quiet evenings on the porch, watching the sun set over Montana. On the 20th anniversary of the day, Matt had pulled Dia from the rubble they gathered on that same land where the cabin had once stood. The Rhodes family, Matt and Dia Sarah, now 18, and teaching alongside her mother Will, 16, and apprenticing as a blacksmith, and their youngest daughter Emma, 10 years old and full of questions. Matt had rebuilt the site into something beautiful, a small ranch house where they spent summers with a garden where Dia grew tomatoes and a workshop where Will learned his trade. This is where it started, Dia said, standing with Matt while their children explored the property. 20 years ago. Best day of my life, Matt said, even though I didn't know it yet. You saved me that day. We saved each other. Dia turned to look at him, and even after 20 years, Matt still felt his heart skip when she smiled. Do you remember what you said about bare hands and brave hearts? Did I say that? No, I did. At our anniversary dinner years ago, I said we built this family with bare hands and brave hearts. She reached up and touched his face. And we did, Matt. We built something real from nothing but hope and determination. Matt pulled her close, this woman who'd given him everything: purpose, family, love, life itself. I thought I was saving two strangers that day, he said. But the truth is, I was finding my own. Sarah called out then something about Will chasing Emma through the garden, and they turned to see their children laughing in the late afternoon sun. Matt looked at what they'd built, not just the house and land, but the family, the life, the legacy of choosing love over fear. No regrets, Dia asked. Not a single one. And standing there on the ground where he'd once dug through rubble with bleeding hands to save a woman and baby he didn't know, Matt Rhodes understood something profound. The bravest thing he'd ever done wasn't surviving the war or losing his family or riding alone for 6 years. The bravest thing he'd ever done was hearing that scream and choosing to stop, choosing to care, choosing to dig through the wreckage and pull out hope. Because that choice, that single moment of deciding not to run, had given him everything that mattered. I love you, he said to Dia. I know, she said, smiling. You've been showing me for 20 years. That night, the whole family gathered on the porch. Dia raised her glass in a toast, her voice strong and clear. To bare hands and brave hearts, she said. To the man who stopped when everyone else would have kept riding. To the family we built from rubble and faith. To choosing love even when it's scary. To showing up every single day. Everyone raised their glasses. Sarah's eyes were wet with tears. Will was grinning. Emma was confused but happy. Matt looked at his family, at everything he'd almost missed by being too afraid to care, and raised his own glass. To coming back, he said. To stopping instead of running. To the woman who taught me that surviving isn't the same as living. As stars emerged over the Montana sky, Matt whispered one more thing, something only Dia could hear. That day I thought I was saving two strangers. Truth is, I was finding my own salvation. And 20 years after he'd heard a scream that changed everything, sitting on a porch, surrounded by the family he'd never thought he deserved, Matt Rhodes finally understood what home really meant. It wasn't a place. It was the people you'd fight through hell to protect. It was the choice you made every single day to stay and build instead of run and hide. It was love, messy, complicated, terrifying, and absolutely worth it.